So, can you say your full name so I can learn how to properly pronounce your last name, and then you can share maybe how old you are and what business you're in?
Yeah, Maxwell Joseph Mason Sturtevant, if you want the full name, but just Max Sturtevant. A lot of people mispronounce the last name here and there, but I don't really care. Sturtevant, Sturtevant, Sturtevant doesn't really matter. Sturtevant, I mean, any of it works. But yeah, I'm 21. I do email marketing for e-commerce brands, and I like I like shooting the shit on the internet and whatnot. I'm in college still, and yeah, I got into kind of this whole space when I was 19. So it's been 2.5 years or so in terms of like actual like copywriting email marketing. But I always had a bunch of businesses growing up, so I was always kind of in the space, but like actual copywriting, like legit business and trying to build something like that. It's been about like 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah. Okay. So we were in the same coaching program. I just finished Client Ascension. You're still in there, uh, and you are interesting to me, especially because you're kind of this case study that I bring up to my friends, not necessarily by name, but I'm like, yeah, I'm in this group, and there are dudes who are in college who are making like tens of thousands of dollars a month in their business, and that just blows my mind because when I was 21, I had no concept that it would be possible to be making 30, 40, 50, 60, $70,000 every single month. And so I'm curious, when you reflect on that and you look at yourself in a little bit more zoomed out of a way, like what do you think the two or three pillar things that differentiate you are that have made it possible for you to achieve that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I mean, like, I'm not like I mean, it's not common to be doing this in college, and I recognize that. But like, I also don't feel like I'm special in any way. Like, I feel like anybody could do it. But like, a couple things that are like have helped me be able to do it because I mean, I work at least like 10 hours a day, like minimum, like even with classes and everything. And luckily school comes very easy to me, and that's always been super easy to me, just in terms of like not trying to be in like a braggy type of way, but like it school just for some people it comes a little bit more difficult, but for me it's just always been easy. Like I don't really need to study too much outside of class. I can just like kind of like lock in during lectures, maybe like kind of listen and like still do good. Like I have really good grades. I'm here at school for like a essentially a full ride. Um, and so that's also part of the reason why like I'm still in school, but like, school isn't too difficult for me, so it doesn't take too much time out of my day. Is my mic doing okay, by the way?
It is, yeah. I was a little scared
Okay.
because I didn't see my green bar popping up, but
Oh
everything's
no,
good.
you're good. You're good. But yeah, that's in terms of like still doing it in college. That's school's always been it's been okay for me, and I've been able to manage and like still get good grades and whatnot. And it hasn't been a huge stress, and so that just enables me to want to do other stuff. And then so that's kind of like the first thing. And then the second thing is just like me as a person. I've struggled immensely with anxiety and just a whole bunch of mental health problems, whether people think it's real or not, whatever. I Whether it's real or not, or if it's caused by yourself or caused by not, like I struggled like immensely all throughout high school and beginning of college with just crippling anxiety, and just not being to. If anybody knows like depersonalization and just like that feeling, I had just like a chronic feeling of depersonalization, derealization at all times, to where it's just pretty much always feels like you're in a dream. Like if you have it and you just don't feel real, it's this weird, really weird thing. And just like people, like if you get it, you get it. So I was just in a constant state of that, like always. And the only way I've found to be able to like overcome that is by always being busy, always being super busy. That's the only time. Like when you're super busy, you don't give your brain time to think about like, oh, how do I feel today? Like how am I feeling anxious today? Oh, what are these thoughts? And like, what's the deeper meaning of this? And then that just turns in on itself and then creates a whole bunch of uh, bad thoughts. And then you just go down this spiral. And so kind of like, like during high school and stuff, it was sports and all that kind of like got me out of that and would make me feel better for a time. It's just when I'm super busy with all that type of stuff. But like after that ran out, like in between sports seasons, I was struggling like intensely, just having the worst thoughts that you could have and not really knowing what to do because it's weird. Nobody could really connect with me on that. And so I found an outlet of like business work and all that as being that outlet where I can distract my brain and actually do something where it's where I can actually like distract my brain because I guarantee now, like even or I don't want to say I guarantee, but I have a feeling that if I stopped working and I just did nothing all day and I just like kind of did school and then in between classes I was on TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff, I would be struggling immensely as well. And so kind of like to keep my sanity, that's also where business comes in. And I just love it. And so that's one of the reasons that like really keeps me in because I know well, first I love it. I love business and building and whatnot. So that's definitely a piece. But also like I think my anxiety and struggles with these mental health issues have helped me. They're the reason why I've been able to see some success and the reason I'll continue to see success because to keep my sanity, I need to be working at all times. I need to be moving. I need to be doing stuff. I need to always be moving to keep my brain busy or else I'll go insane. And so that's like this funny little, you can view it as like a flaw in yourself. And that's kind of like what I did. It was just like, oh, pity me, just like I have anxiety, like I, whatever. But instead, I kind of like shifted the mindset where it's like, oh, this is a thing that like holds me down. And I've shifted it and I've tried to shift it and it'll constantly be a battle. Trying to shift it to be like, yeah, this sucks, but it's also the reason I am who I am. Like the anxiety is what has pushed me to I had a 4.0 all throughout high school. I mean, I was sports at a high level. I was all the all the accomplishments and everything, captain of all the teams and all this stuff. Go to school on like a full ride, and then like now like do my business. Like none of that would happen if I like didn't struggle intensely with anxiety to constantly be moving and try to always be distracting my brain. Like that wouldn't I wouldn't be me without it. And so it's the reason why I have some success in certain areas of life is because of it. And so, like, kind of changing that narrative helped a lot. And that's, I think, it's just like who I am. And if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be in the position I am now.
Mm. Wow, man. That sounds like a really intense and interesting state that you described where you feel like you're walking through your day, but you feel like you're in a dream the entire time. And it
Dude,
sounds
it's
like, based on how
weird.
you described it, it sounds like it wasn't necessarily like a positive dream. It was like kind of
No,
a
no.
dissociated nightmare.
Yeah. And so I was having, like, at its worst, I was having 6 to 8 panic attacks a day. And, like, if you ever had a panic attack, like, that's it, they suck. And
Yeah.
so it was
One
bad
is
because it's just
plenty.
a, yeah, one is plenty. Um,
Yeah.
And so like I'd be in like algebra in high school and I'd feel like a panic attack coming on and I'd be like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I start freaking out and then I have to like walk out of the classroom and go to the bathroom stall and just like write it out. And so it was tough, but like yeah, it's tough to explain the feeling. Like I'm sure like everybody experienced it in some capacity, I think. Because it's a symptom of anxiety. It's kind of like it's a feeling. It's kind of like a constant feeling of a panic attack. Is like if I had to describe it, like you're detached, everything. You're not really. I can't even really explain it. Like everybody's probably felt it in one way or another, or like or maybe like the fallout after like a panic attack for the next couple minutes, where you're just like kind of like out of it and on edge. That's like what it is, 24/7, all throughout the day, and
Man.
it's a weird feeling.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool though how you're kind of embodying what I tend to see in a lot of people who are really high performers is, and I don't want to pigeonhole you into a box. I mean, this is a compliment, is that you've kind of transmuted what could be kind of a crippling internal affliction into the very thing that is at least partially responsible for your success, which you kind of see. Like I'm really into music production and musicianship
Sweet.
and all of that, and I see that in a lot of my favorite artists is that it's like you look at how obsessive they are and it's almost like they're kind of like running from their demons in a certain way and using the music as an outlet to find some peace of mind from that, and in that way they have a competitive advantage over me, for example, because I create music just because I think it's fun and a beautiful art form, and they create music because it's like their lifeline. And so
Yeah.
they're gonna work harder than me, just kind of out of necessity in a certain way. And the results of that are just like a lot more productive output. And so I don't know if you exactly resonate with that, but that's kind of, in addition to loving business, the vibe that I'm getting from what you're describing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people talk about it. I don't know the actual like quote unquote influencers or whatever, but like saying that like you need like a push and a pull mechanism with you. So you need something like Hermosi talks about it. You need something that you're running from, and then also something that you're running towards. So whether that be just like the fear of being like a failure, that can be a driving factor, like pulling you like just running away from that, or like maybe you had a situation in the past where you were like overweight and all that stuff and you hated how you felt, and so that's why you lift and go to the gym every day. You're running away from that feeling. And then also the feeling of just like, and a lot of times that can be more powering than what you're striving to be, which is like a big six pack like built guy. A lot of times the what you're running from can be a lot more powerful. I do think you need both, but they definitely
Mm,
both play a role.
yeah, that's a great point. And that's honestly one of the biggest things that I've been mulling over for myself in my own business, is the kind of, feels corny to even say it, but like finding my why.
Hmm.
And because what I notice is right now I have a good amount of very clear factors that feel like what is the fear based one, the push mechanism?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't even
Yeah.
know. I might have just made that up.
Yeah. No, that sounds legit though. But yeah, so I think let's call it the fear is the push mechanism. So I have like a lot of reasons why I'm doing business because I don't want the alternative, but I'm less clear on the I'm doing business because I want to use the business to achieve this very specific outcome. Like I noticed that I have really true and somewhat noble thoughts of how cool it would be to, you know, be able to help my parents financially, be able to, uh, give my best friend who's also into music, just be able to pop up one day and be like, yo, bro, here's a full studio and you don't have to work for a year and
Nice.
go
Yeah.
like live your dream. I would love to be able to do that kind of stuff. And at the same time, what I found in my own self inquiry process with trying to figure out why I actually want what I want is that all of the stuff that's based around other people is very noble and sweet and cool and actually authentic, but it doesn't often feel strong enough if there isn't something that also includes why I actually want it. If I'm just doing it to like help out other people, but I'm not actually passionate about it, then it doesn't feel like it's fully connecting. And so that's something that my overthinking brain has gotten a bit hung up on, is just
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, how do I stay really passionate and push through like the hard shit in business if I don't have like a super clear reason why I'm moving towards a greater goal?
Yeah, and I think it's just like your fallback, because a lot of people, it's you have something to fall back on, and you have it's are you comfortable like with where you're currently at? That's the question, is like if somebody's like comfortable with where they're at, like why would they, like everybody's gonna say like yes, it would be really awesome to be able to do this for my parents, like retire my parents and be super successful, have all this money that I can spend, I can live in a mansion or whatever. But it's see, I'm having a hard time articulating this, but everybody wants to say that, but it's the what happens like if you're truly like content with where you are and it's just like it's not a big deal that I'm living like paycheck to paycheck, like I'm fine, then like obviously you're obviously not going to take any action on it, because like everybody wants to be at that point. It's just it's the pain of remaining the same versus the pain of change, like that sort of thing. And a
Mm,
lot of times what helps, well, I've always been like very, maybe it's because I'm super competitive, but I always have super high standards for myself, and it's just like if I'm average and where everybody else is at, I'm a failure. Like if I'm doing what everybody else is doing and I'm at where everybody else is at, then I'm failing. Like I have a very, very high standard for myself. And that's like why, like with sports and then school and then like business too, like easy one to compare is just like with school. If I'm where everybody else is at, I'm like, fuck, well, what makes me special if I have like just a 3.3 GPA and I am doing all this stuff? Like I'm just like everybody else. And that's kind of in talking about high school. And so I want to be high achiever. And that's kind of like the
Mm,
very high standard I set for myself, where if I'm not high achieving, if I'm not like at the top, then like what's the point?
mm, yeah,
I think
that
that's
makes
just an internal
sense.
thing because I've always been like that. And I don't know, it seems douchey to say that out loud, and I'm having a hard time articulating it, just like being like, oh, I want to
Mm,
be better than everyone. But like that's just like the standard. I feel like like with everything I do, I'm trying to, like everybody says they try to be the best. So I'm having a hard time articulating it. But like I like simply being where everybody else is just like isn't that doesn't work for me. And I'll just feel like a piece of
mm,
shit about myself. Whereas for some people
mm,
they might have a lower tolerance for it, where it's like even if you are lower, if you are average, like that's great. For me, with every area of life, like average isn't great, and like I'll feel like a piece of shit about myself if I'm average. Whereas if somebody was below average, they'd feel like
mm,
a piece of shit about themselves. For me, it's like if it's average, I feel like a piece of shit about myself. And so
mm,
I think that's just a higher standard. I think that's just a personal a thing you have to develop within yourself. I think that I've just been lucky with it because I've always been like that. But yeah, at that point, I'm just kind of
mm,
rambling. But it's something interesting. Like the more I'm around people, because also I'm in college, and a lot of people just are content being just like riding through and just like coasting, and that's just never been.
mm.
I don't know. I just don't understand that mindset where it's like, yeah, I'll just coast. I'll just feel like a piece of shit. I'll feel like a potato.
Yeah, I hear that. That's interesting. It makes me wonder, if someone's listening to this and they feel like they want to have the financial independence that can come with starting your own business, starting your own agency, but they don't feel like they can identify within themselves that they don't love business itself, like the process of being an operator, for example. uh, what do you recommend those people do? Do you recommend people just try to kind of like climb the job ladder and go that way? Although I imagine that person probably is interested in this like off the beaten path entrepreneurship path because they don't want like the corporate 9 to 5 lifestyle. So it's
Yeah.
uh
Every
it's kind of an interesting
everybody
one.
wants everybody wants to have their own business. Everybody, like you could talk to anybody. It's like, do you want to like would you rather work for yourself, work on your own hours, or would you rather work for somebody else? Like everybody, every single human will be like they want to at least like have some freedom in like their job. It's just nobody has the balls to do it. They just don't have the balls because they can't handle the uncertainty of it. They can't handle the uncertainty of like because you're when you're working for yourself and or when you have some sort of freedom, whatever, it's you don't know how much you're making like the next month. And it's like, will I pay this amount? Will this client pay this invoice? Will I have calls being booked next month? Like you don't know. And so you're constantly just living in a state of uncertainty. That's why most people quit, is just because they can't handle the uncertainty because it's so much easier to just work for somebody else. It's just like, for a fact, you're getting 6 grand sent to your bank account every month. And so they just write it out. And then everybody says, I actually just took a picture um, from this book. I'm reading this book, Sapiens. It's just like it's a pretty cool book. It's popular. It's just on like the entire history of the human race. I'm gonna read this paragraph because it's such a banger in terms of like where I'm at and where I see like a lot of my friends and why everybody just ends up like coasting and just being like, I'm just gonna read it. It says the pursuit of an easier life resulted in much hardship and not for the last time. It happens to us today. How many young college graduates have taken demanding jobs in high powered firms, vowing that they will work hard to earn money that will enable them to retire and pursue their real interest when they are 35? But by the time they reach that age, they have large mortgages, children at school, houses in the suburbs that necessitate at least 2 cars per family, a sense that life is not worth living without really good wine, and expensive holidays abroad. What are they supposed to do? Go back to digging up roots? Roots? No, they double the efforts and keep slaving away. And that's just everybody
Wow.
says like I'm gonna start working. I'm gonna work my way up and I'm gonna make a bunch of money just like climbing this ladder like when I'm 35. And then like by the time you're 35, you got a bunch of shit that you got to deal with. So if you don't, you have mortgages, you have people depending on you, you have children. What happens? Like maybe you get somebody pregnant like next year, then you're tied down. So like you have to start now because like the only time is now because in the future you're gonna have a bunch of other shit. And before you know it, it's gonna be too late. You have all this stuff because to do like your own business, you have to start from zero and you have to live like a year, 2 years, like not making money. You have to accept that. But if you're 35 and you have kids, you can't go like 2 years without having money and risking that uncertainty. So it's like when you're young, that's really the only time to start a sort of business. And so that's kind of like the thought process there. And
Mm.
that's like the trap that everybody falls into. It's I'm just going to take this now, and I'll be able to work my way up. And by the time everybody says I'll start a business later, like once I have some cash. But it's like later you're going to have a bunch of stuff tying you down, and you're not going to be able to take a year, 2 years of just grinding away.
Facts. Yeah. You inspired me because you just read a badass quote. I have this new book next to me that I got here too on the, it's this book, Sell Like Crazy by
So like crazy. I've heard of it. Yeah,
Sabri Subi. It's that guy who's on all the YouTube ads, the Australian dude that,
yeah,
I think
Australian dude.
Leo, yeah, yeah. So uh, he says the statistics are grim. 96% of all businesses fail within 10 years, with 80% failing within the first 2 years. But even the 4% that make it beyond those first 10 years aren't necessarily successful or profitable. It just means they've survived. If this weren't enough, 90%, 95% of companies will never reach 1 million in annual sales, and out of these rare few, 95% won't ever make it to 5 million, and it just goes on and on. And
Yeah,
so the key statistic there being 96% of all businesses fail in 10 years, with 80% failing in the first two, which is,
yeah. There's
it is
another.
kind of grim.
It is,
Go
and
ahead.
uh,
Yeah.
Hormozy, one of my favorite like quotes from him, is just like sticking to the plan is the hard part. Making the plan is the easy part. Like making the plan, like I'm going to do this for 10 hours a day. I'm going to start with like client acquisition, then build the clients, and then do this, and then operations. Same with like going to the gym. Like I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to be under 2,500 calories. It's a good plan. Setting the plan is the easy part. Sticking to the plan is the hard part. Like you just can't stick with it. And so um like it's a good plan. The plans that you're making that everybody makes, they're good plans. You just don't stick with them. The hard part is sticking to it. So the people that are successful are the people who
Mm,
just stick to the plan. Um so yeah,
yeah.
that's a funny one.
Interesting. That leads me to remember, I think I saw a photo that you posted in Client Ascension, or maybe it was on Twitter, of your daily schedule. And I remember looking at it and being impressed that there were so many blocks of deep work. It felt like there were like 3 or 4 blocks of multi hour deep work periods. And when I reflect on my own daily productivity process, it's actually rare that I have just like, okay, this 2 hour block, my phone's in the drawer, my computer is whatever on some kind of like app blocker, and I'm just dialed in. And you had like 4 of those, and I was just like, okay, this is a different level, and it makes sense why you're seeing the results that you're seeing. I'm curious, are you still on that deep work diet, and do you attribute a lot of your success to your ability to be disciplined with that?
Yeah, so I don't like actually as far as like turning off like phone and all that stuff, I don't really do that too much just because like clients just because I have all these clients and then like random stuff comes up. And so when I say a lot of times like yeah, I'll have at least like one or two deep work blocks where it's like I'm not going to respond to any client messages. I'm going to try to get this task and this task and this task done. But usually that's just it's just I'm not going to do anything else except work at my computer and then knock off these tasks. So I have 2 hours here. There's all this like client stuff, like team stuff that needs to get done. I'm going to do it. And a lot of times a that's a liberty that you have, especially when you're early on, that you have a lot of time in the day where you don't have a bunch of shit to do. Um, and
Mm,
so you can do deep work blocks, but it's like now those are much more difficult for me as I get more busy because I have calls randomly all throughout the day. And so it's like those are much more difficult to do. And so
mm,
I I think, and honestly, I think I'm really bad at like deep work and staying focused. Like I'm not good. Um, in terms of like big tasks. What I do is I lock in on like Slack and then all of our project management systems. I'm just like, okay, all this stuff needs to get done. I'm gonna knock it all out. And then maybe while I'm knocking something out, a client hits me up and says like, yo, what about this? And then I'm like, okay, let me deal with that. And so that's kind of like what I mean by like work block. Um, but like definitely earlier on when I don't have as many calls and you only have a couple clients, it's like you have a lot more time in the day to do deep work blocks. It's the same thing with content. When you see
mm,
people posting so much on like posting so much on social media, it's like, dude, like you have so much time in the day. Like, what are you actually doing in your business that you have that much
mm.
time in the day to create all this content? So that's always a funny thing. Like, yeah, you can set time for content if it's a priority, but like right now, maybe my content's been falling off in terms of like Twitter and all that stuff. Like YouTube's still been keeping up, banging those out. But it's a lot more difficult to have time to do stuff when you're so busy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious what your day to day looks like now in terms of, yeah, how many clients do you have, first of all?
Uh, depends anywhere between like 10 to 15.
Okay, nice. And so, obviously, when you start to get to that, you know, 6 plus clients level, shit starts to get pretty busy because you have a lot of people who you need to deliver for. And I'm curious, have you gotten to the point now where you're workshopping your way out of service delivery and you're becoming more of a team manager? Or what do things look like at the level that you're at?
Yeah, so I so it just shifts as you go. Like I'm still in service delivery. Like a lot of like I like it because I really like my clients and so I want to be in service delivery and that's kind of like how you have to differentiate yourself when you don't have a lot of clients you because also like it's me like in the selling process sales process it's me with the client we're coming up with these strategies so it's like I have to be involved with service delivery because like these people are buying when they agree to work with well copy they're like agreeing to work with me and so like I have to be part of that and so eventually there will be a shift where once we have a ton of clients and it's not like you're working with me, it's you're working with well copy specifically in the processes that I've built. I'm not yet to that point because it's still a lot of, I mean, yes, our processes are a huge part, and I'm more and more getting out of it where I'm more focused on the big levers and the big strategy. But it definitely is like I'm still in the process. I'm still on client calls, building out strategy. But as far as like, there's a lot more team managing now for sure. So we have account managers, designers, and then we have like calls, daily check ins, and I'm managing like kind of like the more little stuff that need to get done on a client basis. That's where I delegate with account managers. So account manager and myself. So I co-account manage all the accounts, myself, co-account manager, and um, they'll do a lot more of the nitty gritty stuff, like writing the copy, doing all the outlines to the designers, revising emails, and then I'll like do checks on it. Whereas I focus on like the macro strategy and like calendars, like here's what we should, here are the angles that are working, and I'm able to look at like a wide lens. Um, and so that's kind of like how that dynamic plays out. And so eventually that'll shift to where um, I'm even more out of it and I'm looking even more macro. But right now, that's kind of the current state of it. Um, and I like it. I think it's fun. The more I can get out of like the nitty gritty stuff, the more I can focus on higher level things. And so that's kind of like what we realize, what we know also, what like the team knows as well is like the more we can get stuff off my plate, the more I can focus on big levers, such as like big client results and like what are like the macro moving things that are making the account like see have great results. And then also the more time I'm out of like fulfillment, the more time I can focus on bringing clients in and bringing new quality clients. So that's kind of like been a big shift for me, is not just bringing in more clients, but bringing in more quality clients. Because when I have a month where, if there's a month where I bring in, I don't know, maybe there's say like two brands we bring on, but I only booked like 5 calls, I might take on less quality clients. Whereas if I book like 20 calls, I'm still only going to bring on 2 clients a month at most. So I'm probably more likely to have, I take the 2 highest candidates there if they're the right fit. And so by booking more calls, it's not just you're booking more deals, because I only limit to like 2 per month new. You're booking more quality deals because we've dealt with some clients before where it's like a lot more work and they're not the right fit. It just takes away from the team having bad clients where it's annoying fulfillment and they're constantly doing strategies that aren't ours and then results suffer. That takes away energy from the team. So by me
Yeah.
focusing on outreach and only bringing good clients, that actually helps with operations, because we're only
Mm.
dealing with like the best of the best clients. So that helps with results. Then that helps with account managers being high spirit. They're able to perform better and all that jazz. So that's been a big focus for me recently.
Mm. Let me ask you this. Do you have KPIs that you have to hit for yourself every single month in terms of, assuming cold email is your main client acquisition channel, are you going in saying, okay, every month we have to send out 20,000 emails per month? Or how do you think about client acquisition?
No, I just kind of, I mean, client acquisition is like all over the place. I'm getting more calls booked off organic recently. And
Wow.
just like the more I build up my reputation and all this stuff. But no, I don't really, maybe it's a bad thing. Maybe it's not, but like I've been growing at a good rate and bringing on good clients. And so I don't really look too deeply into it. I have an inbox
Mm,
manager and like somebody who takes care of like my cold email, helps with strategy and managing all that. And so that helps a
mm,
ton. Um, but no, it's kind of just like review at the end of the month, like how many calls did we book? This many. Okay, maybe we should shift some stuff. Um, but yeah, cold email is just a way of getting traffic, and it's a way of getting traffic to your site. It's a way of getting traffic to like your content. And so like people are like, I get people like maybe I first reach out to them on cold email like 2 months ago, and but they like stay up to date with my content, and then like 2 months later, after I initially reached out to them, they DM me on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I liked this YouTube video or whatever. Like, let's talk."
mm.
Um, so that's
Interesting.
kind of how it comes in.
Okay, so to kind of shift gears a little bit, if you were to start from scratch, and I'm asking you this because my goal of these podcasts is to provide the listener with as much tangible value as possible. If you were starting over and you were building an agency, what what niche would you choose, and what would be your first month, like 2 month plan of attack? You don't have to go like day by day, but what would be like your primary acquisition channel? What would your KPIs try to look like? Like, what's your strategy if you're starting over?
Yeah, so if you're just starting, you can't run an agency. If you're just starting, you can't, because there's so much stuff that goes into it. You need to like just freelance and get your skills up. And so that's what I did. It was just freelancing and just like working inside, getting inside the woodworks of a bunch of different brands. And so what I would do is I would choose like basic, the basic advice, like it's a good plan, but people don't stick to the plan. Pick a skill, reach out to a shit ton of people, get random experience, and then slowly build up. And you slowly build up skills, and then you can make that into an agency and a productized service. It's a good plan, but nobody sticks to it. And so, what I would do is depends on what you like. Like it's the basic answer. Like, what is the one thing that you like? Okay, see if you can connect that to copywriting. See if you can connect it to sales. See if you can connect it to like lead gen, something like that. And then like, I mean, if I was starting over, like remote sales is just pretty light in terms of, I wouldn't say light, but like barrier to entry, I feel like is a little bit lower in that, like with an agency, you have to learn so much shit. Um, you have to learn everything about business. You need to learn operations. You need to learn how to create a calendar. You need to learn how to like create contract, little things. You need to like team. You need to do fulfillment for your service. So if you just, I'd recommend find, just do freelance and work in house for somebody. Reach, so like what I did copywriting was I would be ramming Upwork. Upwork is legit. If you're into copywriting and you want to get clients, do Upwork, just rip it and do like minimum 10 to 20 proposals a day, every single day for 3 weeks. I guarantee that you'll have multiple clients as long as you're not a, as long as you have some social skills. If you're a weirdo, if you don't have social skills, then you're doomed anyways. But if you like can like actually be okay, just 10 to 20 proposals every day that are good, like there's no way that you don't succeed. Um, it's just people don't stick to the plan. Maybe they'll do it for like one day and then they'll like slowly dwindle off and then they'll get upset. But like that's what I do is just like pick your one thing, whether it's copywriting, whether it's video production, whether it's video editing, whatever. Do that, have that be your skill, and just reach out to people saying like, hey, this is like the free work, whatever. Just get some clients and work in house for somebody. Don't try to be like, yo, I'm an agency when you don't have any results and you're a nobody. Like nobody wants to sign you. Be a freelancer, work inside somebody's business, and then you'll slowly will build up your skills. You'll slowly see how the business world works. That's kind of like what I did with copywriting. Was I was working in house for different brands, different agencies, different ecom brands, doing all the copy, and then eventually I got like good at like email specifically, and I like had a good idea of like email specifically, and I built out some systems around that. And then I was able to say I was an agency. Like now I had systems and I had like at least somebody on the team who could help me. But there's just so much that goes into it. And so there's no way to build all the systems of an agency in 2 months. Like it's unrealistic. And so you have to just freelance and kind of like be somebody's like go-to guy for like anything. Just plant yourself in somebody's business and just like do everything that you need to do. You'll slowly build up your skills, and that's kind of like, then eventually you can get to the point where you get to like being able to productize your service.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, and
Just stick to the plan. Nobody wants to stick to it. It's a good plan. Just stick to it.
totally. I think what I've found is the key factor that I was missing in the beginning when I was starting out. I was trying to be a copywriter because I had come across Mason's TikTok, and I was working my shitty 9 to 5 job in a hotel, like wrapping electrical cables and setting up conference rooms for like private equity firms. And I was the audio visual tech guy, and it was
Mm-hmm.
so bad. And I was just like, in my free time when I was, cleaning the ballroom, I'd have my AirPods in. I'd be listening to Mason on TikTok live talking about you can become financially free if you become a copywriter. And so I joined his initial offering called Cash Flow Syndicate back
I
in the
was in there
day.
as well.
And nice. And I just remember them talking about outreach, and they were primarily pushing DM outreach, like personalized DM outreach. Um, and it just, I remember it being so tough because I would reach out to these people and try to send personalized messages to all of them, and it would take so long because I would try to write like this 3 paragraph thing, and then I'd try short stuff, and I was like, okay, this is just not scalable. And I just realized that the skill I really needed to learn, even more so than copywriting, was outreach, like effectively outreaching to people. And for someone listening that's totally lost, I think that's why I think lead gen agencies are interesting, because if you learn the skill of how to reach out to people at scale effectively, then you already have the basically the whole skill that you need to both get clients for yourself and deliver, because you're doing the same thing for clients that you're doing for yourself. And I don't know, looking back, I don't know how you feel about this, but I almost feel like I was led a little bit astray by the idea that it's a smart move to do a bunch of personalized manual outreach, because the way that things really clicked for me was when I flipped over to automating everything. Like I was automating LinkedIn and Facebook at first, and that's what really worked for me. And now my whole system is automated email, and that obviously works well. Um, but I don't know. Like, do you subscribe to the build a business with manual outreach philosophy?
I mean, you can make anything work with volume because, I mean,
Yeah,
with manual outreach, you're going to have a higher conversion rate than with automated just because it works better. It's just like even so say just like for sake of numbers, say cold email is like you have 1% conversion rate for booking a call. For each person you reach out to, for every 100 people you reach out to, you get one who books. Like with manual, maybe it's like 5%. That's an insane jump. That's a 5x. But still you need to
yeah,
reach out for like to like 20 people, 20 manual outreach messages. So it's still just a numbers game and volume game. So if you're doing like
yeah,
only 10 DMs a day, don't expect to book anyone. Don't expect to, like, you have to be literally be doing like 50 to 100 every day for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because people also have decision cycles. You don't just reach out to somebody one time right off the bat. They're like, yeah, let's book a call. Like, it's the same shit. Like, if you're
yeah,
scrolling Instagram, like, you don't just click on an Instagram ad and buy a product right off the bat. That's very rare. You
yeah,
don't. It's, you need to like have, you need to see this person like multiple times, and because people have decision cycles. And so I mean, the rule of seven is like somebody needs to see your brand. I just connect it to like email. Somebody needs to see your brand like 7 times before they like trust you and are willing to buy from you. Um,
yeah,
like I might see an ad from like a cool brand, like selling like a cold plunge or whatever. I'm not buying right off the bat because I don't know them. Like I'm not just gonna click on and be like 79.99. Awesome, buy right on the spot. People just don't do that. Same thing with outreach. And the only reason somebody might book a call with you, like off that first message on like Instagram DMs or like cold email, is because they clicked on, they went to like your website, watched your content, saw you for a little bit, and then they felt comfortable with you. Or like Instagram outreach, they went on and they viewed your profile and they looked at you a bit. They saw you like 7 times, whatever. Maybe it took them a day to respond. And then they're like, okay, this person like seems like they could be like a good fit. Like people have decision cycles. And so what you'll notice is like by week 4, you have people, not only will you have some people from week 3 responding back to you, you'll have people from week 1 starting to reach back out to you. So it's just everything compounds. So if you reach out to like 10 people every day for like 5 weeks, so 10, 10, 10, 10. The thing is, like on week 2, you had 50 people you reached out to from the prior week if you were doing weekdays. And then you reached out to 50 more. So by week 5, you've reached out to like 500 people who still could come back and get you, rather than like if you're starting on week 1, there's nobody who could come back and get you. And so the longer you go, the more people could reach back out to you, and the chance you give them to like pass their decision cycle to where you send like your follow-ups or whatever, personalized follow-ups. It's just a
yeah,
numbers game. So if you, even if you have a 0.01% conversion rate on like cold email or manual outreach, with enough volume, you'll book calls, you'll get people interested
yeah,
in you. It's just a matter of hitting it enough times. So that's the main problem is um, you're just simply not doing enough.
yeah, yeah. So to summarize, I think both of our points here, it's whatever outreach method you use, make sure you do a lot of it because it does truly take a lot more volume than you expect going into it for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, kind of wrapping up towards the hour here, I want to ask a couple more personal questions. I listened to your podcast with Leo recently, which was really enjoyable. And I liked, first of all, I want to compliment you on your podcasting style because I think one thing that you do super well is that you are super yourself and super conversational and you don't mind you're thinking about something and you might be like, yeah, that shit just threw me off. Let me just think about that. Fuck. And then the other
Thank you.
person's like,
Appreciate that.
and I know that reenactment sounded probably kind of silly, but I just I like that you're so comfortable in yourself and like so true to yourself in your conversational style that I could tell that the like Leo in this case who you're talking to was instantly at ease. And so I thought that, that brought out a really good conversation. So I just wanted to
Appreciate
say
that.
that first of all. Yeah. And so I know on that in that podcast you mentioned to him that you you're not super, you didn't grow up like religious or spiritual or with a particular philosophy. And I'm curious to what degree kind of has that kind of stayed the same? Is philosophy and kind of spirituality of some kind creeping more into your field of vision and driving kind of your lifestyle right now, or is it still similar?
Yeah, so a lot of people in this space are religious and very religious. And so I actually just finished this massive book on the Bible and everything about it. Um, so
Mm,
I'm trying to learn. I mean, I grew up, well, until I was like 10 or 11 or 12, whatever, we went to church. And, as a kid, I was just like, this is boring. Um, and I didn't grow up religious. I never saw the point in it. And I don't want to get too deep into it. I don't want to, and I still am kind of like at that point. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to get it. Um, I, there's just a lot of, I don't know. I mean, I'm very like open to whatever, and I'm trying to learn and get it and trying to understand religion because it's obviously like done a lot of great things for people. Um, I and what I can prescribe to the belief too is that everything is like not everything is supposed to be taken literally, like God or whatever driving factors, like everything is subject, like not everything should be taken literally, and everything is contextual and personal to you. Um, but there's a lot of things that throw me off with like religious texts and things that like I don't want to believe in, so I don't want to prescribe to that belief
for
that
sure.
holds me into a box. Um,
Yeah,
so this interesting thing, I to put it to like summarize it, I'm not religious or spiritual. I'm trying really hard. I research it every day. I'm watching videos, reading a ton, and I haven't it hasn't clicked for me. Um, and I'm trying to, but it just hasn't clicked for me. And no, maybe it won't, maybe it will, maybe it'll take personal experiences, but at least like I think it's very interesting. I think it's fascinating.
totally.
Religion and spirituality. I think it's just absolutely fascinating how much control religion has over people's everyday lives and their thoughts. Like how could I like
Yeah,
the amount of millions at the number one reason of death in history is religion and fighting over religion. Something like that. Maybe that's not completely accurate, but so many people have died for this belief. Like so, it's very interesting to me. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of
mm,
like where I stand. I'm just very interested in it and interested in learning. Um, and I think it'll just take for me to like fully prescribe to beliefs in a specific religion specifically, not as much spirituality. It'll take like personal experiences that I haven't felt yet.
mm, that makes sense. Have you ever have you ever tried in an intentional setting using psychedelics before?
I haven't, no. I haven't used any
Mm,
psychedelics. I've always been like in terms of like drugs and alcohol, I was never too interested. Um,
mm,
never liked drugs, weed. Um, weed I didn't really drink until like senior year of high school, and then like even then like that was like super late for everybody. I was always just like the lame kid
mm,
who didn't drink, because I was scared of my anxiety and if it would bring out my anxiety. um so that's why I didn't. And then college had a little bit more drinking then, but I've never been a
mm.
drugs guy because they scare the shit out of me, which is probably a good thing. And so I've never done drugs, and I'm scared of taking any type of psychedelic. So I can't imagine I will anytime soon. But super interesting stuff, um and yeah, because I'm just so scared of permanently altering my brain state because I felt like that's what happened with like my anxiety that I struggled with for so long is an
Mm,
altered brain state. So I'm just terrified of like an altered brain state, something that I can't control. But it does
mm.
sound sweet, and everybody has cool experiences with it, but I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah, it can go both ways. I think, that's one thing I've done. I've experimented with mushrooms and things of that nature a handful of times, and primarily always positive experiences. But
Nice.
the weird thing about it is that it kind of gives you maybe the experience that you need, not the experience that you want. in my
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah,
in my time with it. And so yeah, it can really highlight anxiety, for example, and it can also be a vehicle to, I think the reason I thought of it is it can be a vehicle to kind of blasting the door open on understanding spirituality, for example, or maybe for some I consider religion spirituality, but just kind of a
yeah,
different filter of it. um, but for me it it makes certain spiritual principles really experiential, which is what I think is beneficial for people about them. And you see these people that go in and they're super rigid and don't believe in anything, and they're just like,
hmm,
if I can, I only believe it if I see it. And then they
yeah,
have like an ayahuasca experience or something like that, and like I watched this documentary of this really stern British dude, or I don't know, it might have been American, but he was like super anti psychedelics, and then he tries ayahuasca for the first time, or maybe it was some kind of like toad venom
yeah.
thing
Some random
in
toad
the
they took.
rainforest,
Yeah,
some random toad, yeah. And he is, with the guidance of a shaman, he kind of lays back on this blanket and he comes out of the experience like a minute or two later, and he's talking about like, I felt like I turned into the wind, and I felt myself like merge, my consciousness merge with the forest and the ecosystem, and I could feel like I was talking to God and I was a part of everything. And he came back and he was clearly kind of changed forever in a very opening way. And
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I always think like, is that spirituality? Is that like proving of like another dimension, or was bro just high as shit? Like,
sure, sure, it's, I think that's a fair question. And what's interesting about it though is when you look at the big picture, you see, okay, why does like everyone who takes DMT, for example, not every single person, but like such a vast majority of people who do like mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, things of that nature, they talk about things like oneness with everything around them. They talk about feeling principles of like universal love. Obviously, they also talk about crazy hallucinogenic experiences and machine elves and colors and all kinds of wild stuff. But there are kind of these core principles that resonate throughout all of those experiences. And what I think is interesting about that is then if you cross examine that with like the deepest meditative practitioners of our time, and looking at like Buddhist lineages and Taoism and Hinduism, and even what like Jesus says in the Bible, like he says the kingdom of heaven is within, and God is, I'm probably misquoting here, but something like God is I am. And you cross reference that with, like Eastern non-duality spirituality, where they talk about like focus on the sense of I amness within yourself, or the sense that you're aware right now, the sense that you exist. And as you meditate on that, you start to realize things like everything has a unified underlying nature, for example. And so that gives me a little bit more, or a lot more validity to the psychedelic experiences of like, oh, it's not just people who are super high. It's like they're kind of using this TNT exploding the door open to what people also arrive at when they're super sober and just dedicated to deep introspective meditation. And yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
I just think that's interesting. Yeah. Do you
yeah.
want
It's
to
very
do,
interesting.
do you want to maybe share one of your biggest takeaways from the Bible like book that you're reading?
Let's see. Um, a lot of battles in my head with like making sense of it. Um, I think a lot of it is just it's just driving. It's just lots of good ideas to like live your life and a way to live
Mm.
life, lots of driving principles, but there's also like a shit ton of like bad principles that you shouldn't follow. Things of sexism, racism, slavery, all that stuff. And
Mm.
so I don't know. It's this conflicting thing. So it's like, do you want to pick and choose what you take from it? And then at that point, it's just like, so you don't only take part of the word, or do you take all of the word?
Yeah,
It's
right.
but learning the history is fascinating to me. So like my biggest takeaway has been like learning all the history and the differences between the Old Testament and the New Testament, how the church was formed, the Christian church, how that differed from like the Jewish people, and like how they don't believe that Jesus was the second coming. And so that's been super interesting to me, and just being informed on that topic, and then like all the other like documentaries and YouTube University videos I've been watching has been cool. And just understanding the
Mm.
history and what people believe in. Um, let's see, I'm trying to think of like, I think it's like it's been it's been interesting as far as like takeaways that like for my personal life, I've had a hard time taking some because they're just, I don't know, it's this big battle in my head. Definitely religion and spirituality is an internal battle that I'm going through right now. Because I'm not trying to force it. I'm not trying to force myself against it. Um, I think it's just having that base knowledge now, and I can live my everyday life. But I do like the idea that there is some divine, just like everything is meant to be, and sometimes things are out of your control, but it's just part of your path, and you just have to
Mm.
keep living. And something may not feel good in the moment, but it's for the betterment of you in the long run. um, I think that's an interesting takeaway, but also I feel like that's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have to be a god thing. That could just be the nature of life and how life is.
Mm.
um,
Mm.
so yeah, kind of a lot of, you can see my brain is all over the place, and you can kind of, this will be fun like 5 years down the line if I listen back to this, like seeing where I'm at with it at that point where I'm
Yeah,
at, and then listening back to see where my head is at, because it's definitely all over the place. And
totally. I did
yeah,
put you on the spot with that question. I also
oh
feel
no, I
I feel
like
kind
it.
of I feel like I said kind of a deep excerpt there about like the ties between psychedelics and spiritual seeking, and then I kind of diverted you straight into another question. So I wanted to see if you had any thoughts
Oh
on
no, that's
kind of
great.
the
That's great.
yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
no, it's the psychedelic stuff. I'm a little bit ignorant too. So I'm not too sure. I just know that people get really high and they say that they have these experiences. I haven't experienced it myself, so I'm not sure. It's very hard for me
Yeah,
to prescribe to beliefs that I haven't experienced myself. Just like with
totally.
people like near death experiences, when they say like they saw like a light or whatever, it's like, yeah, like you probably did. Um, you probably did. Like, what does that necessarily mean? Like for me, and it's kind of like your word. And a lot of times, like you could say that I've had plenty of dreams where like I see a light, and or like I see like some like power or whatever. Is that necessarily is that necessarily an upper being, or is that just my brain firing random signals because I'm asleep and I'm like in between like being asleep and awake? Um, so that's kind of like, I'm very, I again, I try to be very open minded, and I'm trying to
Mm.
learn. Um, and it's interesting. I think it's just going to come down to me continuing to live and continuing to think through the lens of spirituality and religiousness, and then experience these experiences firsthand, and then see how things change. Again, I don't want to force myself to prescribe to any belief or to any anti-belief, so I'm just like living, see what I experience,
Yeah,
and um, see what happens.
I love that, man. Cool. Well, I want to be mindful of your time, and so I want to maybe ask you one or two lightning round questions inspired by listening to Andre and Christian their agency builder podcast, which I think is discontinued.
Banger, yeah.
One one question that I really liked that they ask that I'll modify a little bit is if you could have a say a 15-second max State of the Union address to the whole world, and it was just you on TV to every single person. Everyone was paying attention deeply, intently listening to what you had to say, and would do their best to internalize your message. What what would you say to them in those 15 seconds? No pressure.
I'd need to think about it, but off the top of my head, what came to my head is just it's not that deep. It's not that deep, bro. Just what you're doing right now, the problems that you're facing, it's not that deep. You'll be good, bro. That goes with business and life. It's not that deep. You'll life moves
Mm,
on. Life moves on. You'll figure it out. It's not that deep. Um,
mm,
that's kind of the first thing that came to my mind. That's something that I always tell myself is it's not that deep, bro. Like, come on. Like any little problem comes up, it's not that deep. It'll be over in like a week and you'll look back and be like, it's fine. Everything always works out in the end. Every major life problem that I've ever had ended up working out. And so
mm.
it's not that deep, bro.
I like that. I like the if someone takes that the right way, then I think that can instill a lot of ease in people and just recognize like, oh, I've been kind of clenching and uptight and like, oh, cool. It's not that deep.
Yeah.
Cool, brother. I think that feels like a really natural place to leave it. And yeah,
Cool.
I'm really happy we got the chance to connect. You're a super cool dude,
Hell yeah,
and I
man. It
really
was great.
admire.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, brother. Thanks so much. And yeah, keep crushing it with biz and looking forward to just staying in contact and seeing how our paths intertwine and hope this was valuable for everyone listening. So thank you again, my man.
Hell yeah. Appreciate it.
Cool, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Cheers.